Hi, my name is Thornton, and I'll be talking to you about culture shock. According to Quintessential, culture shock describes the emotional roller coaster that someone experiences when entering a new country. There are 5 progressive stages of culture shock. First, frustration with culture and like learning the new language. Second, unwillingness to understand the local ways. Third, ethnocentricity. Fourth, racism. And fifth, avoidance of the culture. There are many disadvantages of culture shock. One is that people tend to give up free trips and want to return home early. For example, a U.S. executive was placed in Taiwan for a job, and he was supposed to work there for 4 weeks. And the company's policy was that if you worked 3 weeks in the Far East, then you got a free week to Hong Kong, all expenses paid. But instead of taking that free trip, he decided to work through weekends and through the last week just so he could go home early. Another disadvantage, like I said, is that culture shock is very costly because the companies have to pay to fly the employees home early because they don't want to be there. In 1990, according to Furrow, return of business people was about 45 to 85%, but recently is lower to 4 to 8%. An example of what culture shock might do to a child would be like this. A family spent 8 years in Saudi Arabia, and while they were there, their son was born. And in Saudi Arabia, women can't drive. It's very uncommon. So when they moved back to the States and their mom bought a car, he was very shocked and surprised to see that she was driving a car, and they had to explain to him that cultures differ from every country. Even though culture shock is very stressful and hard to deal with, people cope with it in many different ways. The first way is unacceptance of host culture, which means that there's no effort to learn the language or the ways of the new area. The second is substitution. Travelers learn the right responses of the host country, but instead they stick with their local ways. The third is addition, which adds behavior of the host country when around them, but then when they're not around them, they go back to their local ways. The fourth is synthesis, which integrates both elements, and the fifth is resynthesis, which is integration of ideas not found in either culture. So that would be like an American going to India and not eating Indian food or American food, but eating Italian food. So people deal with culture shock in many different ways. There are also stages of it. There are 5. The first is excitement, which is like the honeymoon phase. When they first get there, they're really excited to learn. But then the second is crisis, which when it's over and they start to realize the difficulties. The third is adjust, when they start to adjust. The fourth is when they accept it. And the fifth is reentry. Culture shock is represented in a U curve. So the top left is where the positive begins, and then the crisis stage, and then the adjustment stage, and then the acceptance stage, and then all the way up to reentry. And then the reentry phase is a whole other thing because it's like some people get culture shock when they go back to their home country because they've been away for so long, and that's represented by a W curve. And so basically it's the same thing with another U added because of the initial shock of returning home from their country when they haven't been there in a while. And some people agree that reentry is just as stressful as when they left. So in conclusion, I hope this informed you about culture shock, and thank you for your time.